One of the groups that we work with most at Albane Institute are first responders. We're working with many people who are called to deal with a conflict or a crisis. We have trained so many doctors. It's very interesting. Many of our doctors need doctors. I often find that our doctors are even more sick than their patients. And every time they see the patients, they even get more sick. But not just our doctors. What about all the security actors that live within our countries? Those who are putting out fires. What about our police officers? We're even working with our prison officers. We're helping our prison officers to rehabilitate and reintegrate and to heal and transform prisoners. Because if they go out and they continue to harm and hurt society, it will have an effect on us. And this is why it's very important for us to help our officers, our first responders, to deal with their stress, to deal with their distress, to deal with their trauma. Because if they don't, you will find that many are developing post-traumatic stress disorder. They become disordered, they become dysfunctional, they become disorientated, they become disgruntled, they become so disconnected from themselves. Even their wives and families can say, "We no longer know you anymore." It is critical for us to deal with the stresses of this life or the traumas of this life before it deals with us. An example: when we are stressed, we may become sad. It's a symptom. This is why in Albane, we don't look at why you got sad, who made you sad, because maybe you don't even know. Is it work related, life related, marriage related, children related, health related, past related, present related, future related? You might not even know. But you know what happens if you don't deal with your sadness? It may develop into something like depression. And if you don't deal with your depression and your stress goes up, you might become in a state of despair. You might become or feel helpless or hopeless or useless or powerless. We work with many people with PTSD, particularly our first responders, and especially we are working with many of our soldiers who have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And so the life becomes complex. The symptoms become more complex. So moving from sadness, you see, we become sad now and again and it comes and goes. But the higher the stress you have, the higher the sadness you'll have. The longer the stress you have, the longer the sadness you will have. This is why we need to look at the effect. We need to look at the effect and not the cause. And let's just see this sadness, depression, despair, helpless, hopeless, useless, powerless. That's when we may disconnect from self or society or loved ones. We might even begin, in many cases with people with PTSD, they begin to disengage from their work, their families, their homes. What was life-giving before is no longer life-giving. Some become suicidal. They have suicidal thoughts or suicidal tendencies. And in the end, some people may actually take their lives. So dealing with PTSD for first responders is critical. Do we wait until it's critical? Do we wait until it's severe? Do we wait until the person's out of control? Not at Albane. At Albane Institute, where we make sense out of nonsense, where we help people to deal with their stresses and their traumas. How? Name them, claim them, tame them. Not name and claim and tame the past, the causes, the traumas, but to name, claim and tame the effect. If you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or even trauma, How is it affecting you? Often we go numb. Often we can't think. We can't feel. Often we don't even know what is happening to us. And this is why many of our doctors are even wanting to leave their job. I can't stand sick people anymore. I can't stand my job anymore. I can't stand being a soldier anymore. I can't stand being a fireman or woman anymore. I can't stand driving that ambulance every day. I can't stand being a nurse. Because there's a very interesting symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. What is it? You avoid people and places and things that remind you of the event, that remind you of the past, that remind you of the hurt that you have encountered. Here in Albania, we make a lot of sense out of a lot of nonsense. And for our first responders, many of them, when they leave our classes or 5-day classes of a stress management and trauma healing program, they leave with purpose. They leave with energy. They leave with having developed two beautiful things: insight. Insight means understanding yourself. But foresight is about dealing with any future stress or trauma that will come up in the future. And this is the most beautiful thing that we're able to do for people. We heal, we empower, we transform, we support, and we help people to get back on track so that they can live the life that they choose to live. A life of peace, a life of health, a life of happiness, a life of stability. How do we do it? Minor shift, major change.